Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm breaking down what I think are the topic competitive decks to play at EUIC. We're just 1 week away from what's looking like the biggest event of all time for this one. So in today's video, I'm going to tell you what I think are my top picks to play at this event, looking at online results, regionals, as well as also the influence over Japan to really have a better understanding about where I think the meta is heading in this Prismatic Evolutions format. So, without further ado, let's jump right into the video. Now, my number 8 pick is a little bit rogue, being Klawf Terapagos. I think this deck has a ton of potential. It may not have the better results online, but having that top 4 placement at regionals, I think has really put this deck in a map. I think it works really well with Badu. Having that really scary item look and having a ton of damage potential has really pushed Terapagos to be a much faster, aggressive archetype, and Klawf is obviously really good if we're expecting lots of Miraidon going forward. The matchups as well, I think, really work in its favour. If we're expecting lots of Gardevoir, Archaludon, Lugia, maybe this isn't the best sort of play, but this deck has a ton of potential to work around this one. I think looking at the top 4 deck for Terapagos is really, really powerful for this one. We can see we can constantly reutilise our Klawfs and Badus by having Night Stretcher. Granted, we may only be very limited, we're only having a small amount of double turbo energies, so you have to really be precise about when you want to attach this one. I think super effective glasses is another great sort of option to really make sure Badu can hit these huge sort of damage caps. And so same thing of having that black belt training, lots of ways to really influence the sort of damage output to make these decks hit these huge one-hit KO potentials. My number 7 pick actually goes to Ceruledge. Personally, right now, I haven't had the most sort of fun testing this one, but I think it's in a really good spot. We can see it had really well in the Champions League, but it's also getting top 4 regionals, and lots of people are playing this online. It has a great sort of matchup against some of the rogue style decks, like things like Regidrago or Archaludon. It's very, very powerful in this one. Even likes of Dragapult as well, being about 50%. I think this deck has quite a lot of potential going forward. I really think the best partner goes to the likes of Palkia. It has that really good synergy along with Radiant Greninja. If we're expecting that Gardevoir and Dragapult to be potentially in the room, maybe 30 or 40%, Radiant Greninja is absolutely crucial because some of those decks don't really play mana feed. They don't rely on this one. I still think Badu is a really good inclusion in this one. Just having that item lock ability, just doing 10 sort of damage is really good. Some decks are opting to play likes of Monkey Dory, which is really good to move around sort of damage outputs to potentially boost up Ceruledge, as you have to have that really explosive sort of turn. You do struggle under some sort of item lock if you don't get like potentially 300 sort of damage worth in your first few turns, and you can really struggle to get these huge one-hit KOs on likes of Gardevoir and likes of Dragapult, which is where Radiant Greninja, I think, comes in really crucial in this sort of deck. But having Jamming Tower, if we're expecting lots of Forest Steel Stone, lots of Bravery Charm, lots of what's it called? Sparkling Crystal, this is a really good inclusion. Number 6 pick does go to Regidrago. I think this deck is still going to go strong right now. It did only get a top 64 at the latest regionals, and it's kind of played a little bit online. And looking at the matchup wise, it's still very much okay overall. I would say it's definitely struggling this one. You have some great matchups into certain things, but I would say the format is just a little bit evolved for this one. It's gone away from having how powerful it once was. The kind of build which I'm looking at is very similar to what got top 64 at the latest regionals. I think having the Alone Executor could be a great inclusion. If we're expecting quite a lot of single price sort of decks, for example, the likes of having these Badus in the active spots, or kind of like with Gardevoir, mainly re-attacking with sort of their lone Gardevoir on its own and like spreading the damage counters this one, having the Alone Executor means you can actually snipe on the bench, which could be really, really crucial. This is where I think Radiant History and Gudra is a really good tech in to kind of like go back in the Regidrago. Cleffa could see some inclusion to play this one. Going with Badu makes you a bit more aggressive one. So effectively, if you are worried about item lock and kind of like having a more established board, you could run likes of Cleffa, or generally a 1-1 split of both. Could definitely see a good answer for it. Archaludon, I've gone with number 5, and this deck here is kind of going from strength to strength. It's doing really well on the line scheme, which is so it did very well at the Champions League, getting that win and that top 8, and obviously getting 2 top 64s at the regionals. Looking at the results as well online, as well as also its matchups, it's doing very, very well. Has a really favoured matchup going into likes of Regidrago, Klawf Terapagos, Miraidon, as well as also Dragapult. Having 300 damage is so difficult for some decks to really kind of like get that one-hit KO. And I think having that sort of a warning aspect by constantly picking up with Churro, as well as also Super Scoop Up Cyclone is really, really powerful. Granted, I think the likes of Radiant Origin Form Dialga is a great sort of attacking option as well. It is a little bit slower sort of approach, but potentially taking an additional turn with having your Star Chronos, but also their Metal Blast, pretty much one-hit kill everything in the late sort of game, is really good synergy about what this deck has to offer. I think Jamming Tower, like I mentioned before, is a really good stadium card right now, disrupting all these very, very powerful tool cards we have right now. And if we're seeing likes of Gardevoir go into more of a Hero's Case sort of approach, that's pretty much forcing them to potentially change it to go back to either the Secret Box or even Unfair Stamp, so they can actually utilize that sort of stadium, that ace spec that they have to offer. Plus also, Duraludon one-hit KOs Budew and resist it as well, so they're doing no damage to you one, and you can instantly one-hit KO that in response. I really like Duraludon in this format. Now, my number 4 pick actually goes all the way to Miraidon. And this deck, I definitely feel like came out of nowhere. Lots of people were talking about it going up to regionals. And we can see here, it has had an amazing result. Of course, as all winning, it's going to have a huge backbone to why I think this deck is going to be so popular. And a deck which you really need to understand going into EUIC. Definitely, it got a top 4, 2 top 8s, 1 top 16, and 4 top 32s. This deck here absolutely dominated this regionals along with the likes of Dragapult. You can see its matchup as well. It's pretty good overall. It's either very favourite to some or very much better than other ones. If we're expecting Lugia to be a really powerful archetype, Miraidon, of course, does very well, and Iron Hand can take 3 prizes on Lugia V as early as them going second. And I think this is a very powerful response. And of course, if you're going to play Miraidon this weekend, or in the latest special event, or even EUIC next weekend, just play as all 60. It is so good. The amount of Rotom, how powerful it is, especially if you're going first, just drawing 3 extra cards is so crucial. And I think it's instantly powerful. The one thing I do have some sort of gripe with this one is having a 50 HP Magnemite. If we're expecting Dragapult to do really well, having this sort of liability on the bench, make sure you can't really get that set up. Granted, obviously, you do have a 60 HP one, so obviously that does KO from the likes of Dragapult. I think having that one is a little bit safer on this one. It doesn't get KO'd from any of the Dusclops as well, even on the Charizard side. Raichu definitely is needed right now to get this big one-hit KO on these Gardevoirs, on these Dragapults, on these Charizards. So I really like that sort of synergy in the sort of deck. And the rest of this one is absolutely perfect. Bravery Charm on an Iron Hands is really scary for Dragapult to deal with. They have to have that Duskmore to get the big one-hit KO in the later one. So I do really like when Miraidon's going with this one. And if you're going into testing for EUIC, definitely put this on your radar to be kind of like either played on the event or really know the matchup go back to back. Now, my third pick does go to Lugia, and I really like Lugia in this format. Of course, it gained the likes of Regidrago, and that really helped it kind of like going against these Charizards and Dragapults by having a guaranteed one-hit KO option. It did really well in the Champions League. It's had pretty good showings as well online, as well as also the regional results. Kind of also, the matchup percentage-wise works really well into Lugia's favour. It has obviously a terrible matchup going into Miraidon and a little bit into Archaludon because it's very difficult to get this big one-hit KO, but overall, Lugia is in a really good spot. There is 2 obviously different builds to play. You have this Cinccino build, which is kind of more of a reliable guarantee you get these big one-hit KOs or potential, or you go with this one here, the big basics, which I personally think is much better. Having Iron Hand as well as also Wellspring Master Ogerpon is really difficult for decks like Dragapult and Gardevoir to really deal with in the fact. Kind of having a guarantee that you can either take 2 prizes on 2 one-prize Pokemon, or just a 2 prize on a 1-prize Pokemon with Iron Hands. This is really scary, and having a Wellspring Master Ogerpon makes you can reutilize your legacy energy. Jammertal, I keep hammering on about how powerful this is. I think you should really either start adding like Lost Vacuums, Gardevoir or Dragapult, or play high counts of JM cards because you really want to utilize your tool cards in those sort of matchups. And Lugia, I think, left unchecked, is really strong. And right now in this format, I think it's a perfect play for the deck. Now, my number 2 pick goes to my favorite deck to play right now in this format, Dragapult Dusknoir. Obviously, it had a very good showing both in the Champions League as well as also regionals, and obviously ranked number 1 online. It is so powerful, but matchup-wise, really tells a different story. It has pretty poor going to likes of these Lugia matchups and Ceruledge as well as Archaludon, and has overall very much either a favoured or slightly favoured into certain matchups. But I definitely feel like you need to know this deck definitely at the back of the front. I think this is a really powerful list. This is the list I've been testing with a lot more. Kind of like retrospectively thinking about where to go with Dragapult, thinking like having that Lost Vacuum is really strong. Potentially having a Churro as well. If we're expecting Marwell sort of trapping in Gardevoir, you want to have a way around this one. Or potentially you want to have a Lost Vacuum to remove potentially that jamming tower so you can attack with Dragapult without using like some Crispin or finding that second entry you need, or generally just getting rid of that tool card and taking that additional prize card from our Iron Hands or the likes of the Drifloon, which have got a ton of damage counters on this one. I think this deck is really strong. It works well under Budew. Having that Lance as well can make sure that you can have that slower approach by having that under your opponent under Ice Rock and having a more established board state going with that one before you attack potentially sometimes either as early as, as late as turn 3 or 4 if you have this really good scary board states kind of set up. And of course, my number 1 pick to play right now in this format is Gardevoir. There's no joke to say that this deck here is absolutely powerful and it is so strong. I would generally argue that Gardevoir and Dragapult are kind of like even right now to be the best deck right now because they're so powerful, and it's so good to see that kind of like return of these stage 2 Pokemon is kind of being up at the forefront. We can see it's on a pretty good results as well online, looking at the regionals as well as also the Champions League as well, and the matchups as well. It's pretty favorable or even like at least over favorable in most sort of matchups. definitely build here is focusing more on the top 8 silver list here, and I really like this deck. Playing the 3 Monkey Dories is definitely you're worried you're not really going to be priced in this one. And double Monkey Dory with Gardevoir is absolutely a scary checkmate sort of situation. 6 HP basics, for example, like Duskull, are nowhere safe at all. Or just removing all those damage counters from like Gardevoir and just attacking with Gardevoir constantly, looping them up with Churro, potentially adding like some Power Pad so you can constantly be going in a sort of a Churro style lock with your Gardevoir, which is really scary. Having good trapping options, but having that Marwell, having Spiritual as well to slow down Lugia so they can't get this powerful cards like Luminion out and let's gain all their supporter turn, which I really, really like in this style of deck. I think Gardevoir has got so much good tool factors to go with this one. This one here is playing the Hero's Cape, and I do like this one. Obviously, it's very easy to get these big one-hit KOs potential from like some Screamtail, or generally just chuck it on a Gardevoir. It has 410 HP. That is very, very difficult for nearly every single deck to knock out with, unless you're playing a rogue dark type deck. So that's one thing I really, really like about this style deck. It doesn't play the Drifloon or even the Bravery Charm, which is very different to how we've seen sort of Gardevoir play with it. But even some Gardevoir lists right now, they are evolving to either play only one Drifloon and one Bravery Charm just to offset this one. So I think right now Gardevoir is one of definitely the best play. So let me know what you think about where you think the format is really kind of evolving into EUIC. Do you agree with any of these picks about where I put with this one? Do you think Dragapult is the best deck? Or generally, do you think some other deck, which I haven't mentioned, like Raging Bolt or some other decks like that, or even like some Pidgeot Control, are just a little bit better and potentially even stronger picks than having a Gardevoir or Dragapult? I really hope your testing is going well for EUIC. My testing is going on full swing, and I'm really excited to kind of hopefully see some of you guys there in just a week's time at potentially the biggest event of all time. So my name is Chai TCG. I'm going to be back on Monday talking about the results from the Champions League results over in Japan. Really excited to see the brand new cards and see what best deck came out from in the biggest post-rotation event of all time. So I'll see you guys then and see you later. Bye for now.